Well, I wanted to put another record together about 3 years after the first one, and that 2009 came and went and left and sailed down. So the next thing, it takes about a year to make a record, to pick the songs, find out who you want to produce it, get all that lined up, and so finally last year I called my buddy John Randall up, who had a couple cuts on my first record, and we became friends. And I said, hey, I'd like to make a record with you producing it, because he had produced Dirk's bluegrass record. And I said, but I want to sing all of your songs because he's my favorite songwriter. And he's a pretty humble guy. And he said, I don't know about that. Maybe a couple of my songs. But I talked him into seven songs, because I write with my guitar player, but my songs end up sounding like rhymes. They were just bad rhymes. And when you put them next to John's, it's just clear. It's black and white what the better song is.
How many songs are on the album?
10 songs.
10. So 7 of the 10 you got him.
I got him to do it. And so he produced the whole record with Gary Picosa. And it's great. I mean, it's great. It's a little bit more of an Americana record than the last one, which is a pretty straightforward country record. But it's, the first time around, I had never even sang concerts in front of people. So since then, since '06, I've probably done 600 shows. And, that was the big difference going to the studio and singing now. I just had a lot more confidence, actually, to phrase things a certain way. And when I couldn't grab it, I'd just get John to sing it for me. And I'd steal whatever he did, because, if my ear, he wrote the song, so he knows, so he'd sing a certain phrasing, and then I'd just steal it in my own way.
Does he sing back up or sing on the album?
He does.
Okay.
Yeah, he and his wife Jessie Alexander and Sarah Buxton, and I get some great backups. But John, we'll do a little number here later. John backs me up in he's just got that great harmony.
Well, tell me a little bit the feel of the album. Like, I know a lot of times albums tell stories from the beginning to the end, or
Yeah.
they kind of jump places. Is this more of a themed album, or was it? Tell me about the album itself and the songs.
It ended up being a little bit of a darker themed record, and that just turned out that way. I've always liked murder ballads, suicide ballads, and tales of redemption. And this is I don't want to say it's a drinking song, but there's a few songs on there that talk about overindulging a little bit. I got a song called Cocaine and Communion, and there's me and Whiskey. So there's it's a fun dark path. There's not a lot of sadness in there. There's a great gunslinger, 1800s gunslinger song called El Paso, which is a little bit of an answer to Marty Robbins' big hit El Paso.
What's your favorite song on there? I know that's hard, or a couple of your favorites, and why?
I can't tell you. I can't tell you because it's like your kid,
Well, then what are you singing for me today? And tell me about that song.
We got a couple songs we might sing for you today. I think I'm going to sing. I think I'll sing the Whiskey song, Me and Whiskey, which is about.
Tell me about it. What it's about. And
It's really about a guy and his good friend, his buddy, who comes to town every once in a while, and his name's Whiskey. And like all guys who have a good friend named Whiskey, the wife doesn't really approve, the lady at home, because he stays out with his buddy Whiskey too long. So it's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek song, but it's got a couple double meanings here and there.
relatable music, it sounds like, for a lot of people. Whether that's a good or bad thing.
Yeah.
And
I have a very good friend named Whiskey, who I do spend a lot of time with, but I enjoy his company.
So you get that song a little bit. Right?
I get it a lot.
Anything else you want to tell people about any of these songs, or that, we're going to be profiling the album and you. So anything in particular you want people to know that I didn't ask as far as that goes?
Well, I'm not a big hook guy. I like the story. There are 3-minute stories, and we listen to a lot of songs. I listen to a lot of John's songs, and some I thought I could identify with, and some I couldn't. But I just tried to pick the 10 best short stories that I could. So I didn't go for the big hooks.
Sounds interesting.
It's a toe tapper. I got a couple great high tempo songs on there. I got one. We did a cover of a Willis Allen Ramsey song called "Satin Sheets" that was originally just a really slow ballad that we kind of punked up, turned it into a little bit of a rock and roll Ramones type song.
Yeah, it sounds like it's one of those going to bring you down.
No, no, no. It's uplifting.
All right. Well, I know that I've read in your bio and talking to you, I think, before in Red Carpets, that music's despite people may know you best from acting, music was your first love.
Music was my first creative, besides drawing and painting, it was my first. I got a guitar when I was about 7 years old. I got my own guitar. I banged on guitars from probably 4 years old. My friends had them, and you know, I'd get them and make sounds, and I'd play the backs like a drum, because it's a pretty good drum. It's got a hole in it and a lot of space inside, and the strings would echo. So I was playing the bongos on a drum before I even knew how to play one. So I've always had one, been comfortable around one. And once I did learn some chords, there was this Cherokee Indian who was a friend of the family named Bob Bennington, and he had a beautiful old Gibson sunburst guitar under his bed in a, you know, you opened the case and it was something like out of Raiders of the Lost Ark, because all this purple velvet was in there that protected the guitar, and you know, he could really play it. So that's the guy that showed me my first chords.
As a kid, when you see that, it's probably like, wow.
Oh yeah,
What is this?
yeah, and just you know, look, guitars are pieces of art. You know, there's something to them. You know, some people don't know how to play them. They buy up all the good ones and hang them on their wall just because they're so beautiful. They are pieces of art. The craftsmanship that goes into them. In this particular Gibson, I can still see it in my mind, in my mind's eye. But he taught me some G, D, C chords, and I remember I wanted my first guitar that cost a couple bucks. I was about 14 or 15 years old, and I wanted an Ovation guitar because Glenn Campbell played one, and it was about $350. And you know, we didn't have much money, and so my mom, who worked in a hospital in the cleanup room, you know, cleaning all the utensils so they could repackage them and use them again, she said, I think our rent was $80 a month where we lived, and the guitar was $350. And she said, if I could learn how to play Rhinestone Cowboy, I could have that guitar, and I still have that guitar, and I still know how to play Rhinestone Cowboy.
I love that story. So, I mean, it took till 2006 till you really made that debut album. How did you fall into acting, or was that also something that, you know, how did that happen that you went into acting more so than music?
I left home. I grew up in Wheeling, West Virginia, and I left home at 18. And my mom and dad split up when I was 2, and he lived in California since I was 2. We lived in California, and then we went back to West Virginia. And I didn't go to college, so I went to work. And my dad was a welder, and all the steel factories were drying up down in West Virginia in the late 70s. And so he put me to work in a steel factory. And I did that for about 6 years. And I was a Boilermaker. And I got hurt one day. I hurt my back. And I couldn't do that. I messed my discs up, and I couldn't do that work anymore. And he said, why don't you go to junior college, which is the same one, it was called Cerritos, where he learned to weld. And I went back to school, and I was going down fast in 2 weeks there. I was just, you know, I was like a D student in high school at best, let alone 6 years later trying to catch up. But I met some actors one day in a cafeteria, and they invited me to a little improv class they were doing. And I tagged along, and that afternoon I went and signed up for all the acting classes.
And I was reading in the release saying that it doesn't bother you that people may not know your music and they know you from Sex and the City or from movies or shows, as long as they come to your shows and then hear your music. Talk about that a little bit. How you're okay with that? Just get on there, then they can hear it, right?
Yeah. Look, we're playing these 500 seaters. That means I need to get 500 people in there, because there's nothing like playing a 500 seater with 160 people in there. It looks empty. It looks like it's closing time. So however I can get them in there, you know. And if the marquee says Big Fat Greek Wedding, Sex in the City, Aiden here tonight, that's good enough for me. I just want them in there, because once they're in there, you know, we put on a good show. We put on a 3-hour show with no breaks, and I think they come in there with such low expectations that by the second song, they understand that we know what we're doing. And I think they start to relax, and then they have a good time, and we give them a good show, and then they're ours.
Yours, you got them.
Yeah, right? I got them.
A lot of actors or a lot of musicians do the whole flip over thing, so maybe that's kind of part of it. People just are like, whatever, you know. But so how do you?
No, I get it. I do the same thing.
Yeah.
When I hear Kevin Costner's putting a record out,
he's an actor.
I go, yeah, right. So let's hear it. And then you hear it, and it's like, oh, Kevin's pretty good at what he's doing too.
Like
you know?
Paris Hilton ruin it, which is like I'm a DJ.
Yeah, yeah. There are a few people out there that can ruin it.
Anything else you want to say about this being your passion, your love, and why you do it, or what can draw people in to go buy that album in February?
Man, I'm just doing something that I like. I just signed up for the Facebook today, so they put me on the Facebook and the Twitter because, listen, I'm 52 years old, and, that's not my generation, but now I need to touch people in some way to get them to come to see the shows or buy the music. And it's another way to express yourself. Like I put a bunch of pictures on there today of Batman and Bruce Lee and the Green Hornet and stuff.
To see the other side of you. Social media can change somebody's career for the better,
I'm just trying to share something that I like with other people, and hopefully there's some cats out there that say, hey, I like what you like too. I want to come see you and hear your music, and look, it takes a lot to come out and see a show. You gotta, if you're married and you've got some kids, you gotta get a babysitter. You gotta get up in the morning too to go to work, so you gotta plan all that out. You gotta drive there, you gotta pay to park, pay to come in, drinks, maybe you go have dinner. To come see my thing is more than just walking in the door. It's a whole night that's going to cost you a couple bucks. Even if the tickets are only $8, you're going to spend a lot more money on the periphery doing it. So I understand, people have a lot of choices out there. It's easier to stay home and watch an old rerun of Matlock, in your jammies. But
if you prefer that, at least they can buy your CD.
They can buy the CD. But I do like it when they come out, and it always surprises me when they come out and pack out a show.
Shows in Nashville at all coming up?
I'm doing a show March 3rd at my buddy T-Bone's place. It's called Whiskey Bent Saloon, right across the street here on Lower Broadway.
All right.
March 3rd.